We have 6 items on the agenda. We're going to link 2 and 4 together, and we'll begin with number 1, please.
For item 1, you have a city administrative officer report and a chief legislative analyst. I'm sorry, it's a joint report, and it has to do with the Los Angeles Housing Department applying for a grant for $32,860,870 for neighborhood stabilization program and associated staffing for this program.
That's $32 million.
Sorry, $32 million.
$860,000.
Thank you for the correction.
That's a few dollars difference. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Anime.
Anime, go ahead and.
Okay, Anime Utam from the CAO. The joint CAO-CLA report before you contains recommendations to provide the necessary authorization for Housing Department to implement a proposed plan for expenditure of approximately $32 million in new neighborhood stabilization.
In the back, Mr. McCosker, I can hear you. I can hear you later, but not right now. Thank you. Appreciate
Program grant funds issued by HUD to address foreclosed residential properties and to prevent neighborhood nuisance. The recommendations include several contract authorities for administration and program implementation. In addition, we are recommending a resolution authority for one project assistant position to perform various duties required to implement the program. Attachment C of the report provides a detailed position description. Also, because an ordinance is not necessary to establish the proposed NSP fund for receipt and disbursement of the grant funds, we are requesting amendments to the report by deleting recommendation 5 and substituting recommendation 6 with the language that's been given to the clerk. And I believe it's in front of you. If you have any questions, I'm here and staff is here to answer all of them.
So you are requesting additional personnel
Yes.
in this time of economic disaster. 30 existing staff are going to be in the program, but you need 4 grant-funded positions.
Only one.
So you're looking, wait a second, looking at this. Resolution Authority Civil Service exemption under charter or for the grant funders. Okay, 1, I say. I
Yes.
thought D4, I thought that was for persons. So you need 1 project assistant position. And there's not sufficient personnel within the department to handle this?
At this time, no.
How short are you on personnel?
The department actually has a 10% vacancy rate right now, so there's about 59 vacant positions, and those positions are being held for various salary savings.
Okay, so they have a 10% vacancy. And then they're going to utilize 30 existing staff. So they'll be doing that in addition to other activities.
Yes. And those staff are fully funded.
Under existing funding. And this issue about acquire and rehabilitate foreclosed homes and rental houses in areas with the highest percentage of home foreclosures. What are they going to do when they acquire? You talking about buying them?
Yes, they are, and they're.
And then, okay, rehabilitate, and then what are they going to do with them?
They're going to.
Chair Zine and other council members, my name is Doug Swager with Los Angeles Housing Department. Excuse me. The program is set up in 2 components. The first component is a homebuyer assistance program where homebuyers can come in, find properties within the areas that have been designated for the program and purchase them. And the department will provide mortgage assistance as well as rehabilitation assistance. The second component of the program consists of the creation of a new nonprofit entity, Restore Neighborhoods LA. They will purchase foreclosed properties in bulk from the lenders and loan servicers. The single-family homes, they will rehabilitate and then sell to low and moderate income households.
Is it first-time home buyers?
No, we're not restricting it to first-time home buyers. It doesn't have to be restricted.
So how do you screen
this will
out
allow.
the opportunists that want to take advantage of that and make money off the deal? which has happened in the past. How do we screen those speculators out?
Well,
Flippers.
there won't be flippers. The homes will be sold only to folks that will reside in the houses as their principal residence
For how long? What's
for
the
up to
term?
30 years.
So there'll be
or
a
longer.
condition, a covenant, they need to be there 30 years?
No, there's no minimum time period on how long
can
they
sell
have
it
to
in
stay
a-
there.
in 6 months or a year.
That's correct.
See, the problem with that is we get into the same scenario where we're using dollars, whether it be state, federal, or local, to assist people, but then you've got the speculators to take advantage of that. How do you screen? I don't have any problem helping people out, but you've got an opportunity here for speculators to come and take advantage of it and rip off the system. How do we screen those folks out from this so the people who really need the home can get the home and not turn it over and make a profit?
Well,
That's
although,
the problem I have with this program.
yeah, although they don't have to be first-time home buyers, they can't currently own other property.
But you're not requiring them, if we're trying to clean up the foreclosures, what areas are we talking about?
Yeah, there's maps in the report. In fact, I've got some handouts I can provide you guys.
Okay, we got a citywide map. So it looks like it's South LA, CD 8, 9, 1, 14, 6, 7, 3. So the areas of 11, 5, 4, the more lucrative areas, it doesn't show.
And
No.
rightfully so.
And they do have foreclosures throughout the city.
That's right. The funding required that we identify those areas most impacted by the foreclosure crisis. HUD provided, let's see, the second map on this shows risk factors that HUD provided. They took into account number of foreclosures in an area, number of subprime loans. And with those, they gave risk factors. For this program, we identified those areas with risk factors of 7 through 10 to participate in the program. Those represented approximately 52% of all the foreclosed units in the city. And then we're working with each council district that's impacted by this to identify smaller areas wherein we're going to target the funding.
Well, 32 million doesn't go that far.
It does not.
You're looking at this many properties.
It does not.
Go ahead.
In the housing committee, if you'll notice on the map, one of the maps, the one that has the multicolored, it talks about HUD risk factors and 120% AMI by block group. It did take into account the income levels of the communities, right?
Yes.
Okay.
They have to be
Also-
below 120% of the AMI.
And on one of the sheets, it describes the walk-in purchase assistance and rehabilitation. It shows that provide mortgage assistance and rehabilitation loans totaling up to $125,000 for low-income households, which is less than 80% AMI, and also $100,000 for moderate income households from 81 to 120% AMI. So bottom line is, it's very unlikely that someone who is a speculator is going to be able to get through the cracks here and take advantage of this. Obviously, there's never any guarantees, but they do have to sign documents under penalty of perjury. They do have to sign multiple documents attesting to their income levels, et cetera, right?
That's correct. And we have to certify the income. They can't currently own property. The city will take an
Speak
equity
clearly,
share.
They can't currently own property.
That's correct.
They cannot.
They cannot.
Okay.
And the city will take an equity share of the appreciated value in the property once it is sold.
Because
And,
I know from talking realtors, and my distinguished colleague was a former realtor,
Yes, I was.
engineer,
Mhm.
assemblyman, councilman, dad.
Keep going.
Everything.
Dad, husband, don't forget that.
Husband, that there was a lot of people who took advantage of the real estate market. There were a thing called liar loans,
Correct.
and we see the collapse of the economy with the real estate industry, the banks, et cetera. My concern is, when we're gonna take $32 million of money, that we have every safeguard to make sure there's no abuse And the righteous people who need it have an opportunity to utilize that. And those that want to scam, and being a former cop, along with my distinguished colleague on the other side, Mr. Parks, I'm concerned about that aspect. So the scammers have the opportunity to do something other than this. That's the concern, is that we have it as ironclad as possible so we don't have what happened in the past.
Right, and for every other home buyer assistance program that the city's provided, we have always required that the buyers be first-time home buyers. For this particular program, it wasn't required by HUD, and we chose not to require that to allow folks that have gone through this crisis to have an opportunity, if they can qualify for a first mortgage loan, to purchase another home.
That seems logical.
And-
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, and also, the interesting thing about what was just said is, anybody who comes through the program, even if they were a previous owner, say they lost their home or what have you, first of all, they would still have to qualify under the regular standards, because these loans are not first trust deeds, these are second trust deeds, right?
That's right.
Which means that they still have to qualify under the normal qualifications. Unfortunately, what's going on right now is most lenders are not providing 3%, 5%, and 10% down loans. They're going as high as 20% down, even with good credit. So what it is likely going to happen here is these loans are going to be coupled with an HUD loan, and if it's coupled with an FHA loan, that means they might be able to go down as low as 3 to 5%, which means the city of Los Angeles won't necessarily have to come up with 15% to the buyer's 5%. In addition to that, some of these loans will be able to be utilized to fix up the property, which also assists if we're going to be an equity partner in the property as well. And that's why we need, which is item number one, them to hire somebody really, really good to make sure that we do this right.
Right, and in addition to this, we underwrite, our staff underwrites every single loan. We look at all the income documentation, we confirm employment. Every aspect of the loan is reviewed by staff in-house before it's funded.
So the scams won't be permitted,
That's right.
They'll
which is what
qualify for
happened
2
in the
loans.
past. Pardon me?
They'll qualify for 2 loans in this case.
No,
Right.
my concern is that those foreclosed areas obviously get depressed and a lot of problems occur there. We clean that up. And I have no problem with the program. I just want to make sure there's safeguards so we don't end up throwing away more money on top of what's happened in the past. And that seems to be the trend, and I'm very cautious about that, because it affects, obviously, from this map, many parts of the city where you've got other problems that we need to deal with. And if you want to upgrade those areas, this is a wonderful opportunity, but to screen out those folks that want to take advantage of it. And we know that there are those out there that want to do that. So that's the caution that I have.
Okay.
Mr. Parks?
Let me just ask again on, when I was briefed on this early on, I thought there was some requirement of length of residence, or is it length of time of holding the loan, or there's some, I thought there was some timeline that you just couldn't buy it as a primary residence and you had to hold it for a while, you had to live in it for a while.
There's not a minimum time frame. I can tell you that,
Is there a minimum time frame for resale?
no.
So what if they buy it and rent it out?
Well, we monitor that every year to make sure that it's
Do visits?
owner occupied.
Property visits?
We do visits on a small percentage of them. More likely, we're going to ask for, bills, television or cable bills, phone bills, and those types of things, and then monitor a percentage of those with visits. Excuse me.
But,
No,
no,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Are these federal rules we're going by, or are these internal housing department rules?
Oh, we're following federal rules.
So the issue is that because the money didn't mandate it, do we have the ability to make the rules more stringent in the city of LA? Or do we
To require a longer term
have
occupancy?
Yeah, because the one program I'm aware of where we had these types of loans where, in fact, it was for law enforcement, and they found almost every other place they checked that the people bought it, rented it out, and were not living in it. And it was one of those major black eyes on a program that started off to be thought was to be very successful, but it was limited to certain areas of the city. They purchased and either had no expectation of living there or live there a very short time, and it turned it into a rental property. And so that's why I thought when we were first briefed on it, there was some limitation as to how long they had to be there or how long they must hold on to the note and not basically sell the property.
Well, they must reside in the property the entire time they hold the note.
Yeah, I understand the primary, but I mean, if,
I mean, ours
it
loan
seems
as
to
well.
defeat the purpose if you're going through, and understand on the equity, they have to, at some point of sale, they're gonna have to pay us back. But it seems as though that it defeats the purpose if we're selling it to someone in need, and then they use it to either cash out and to basically buy something else, or, and this is all depending on how the market, if the housing market spikes again, you can quickly have equity that you don't have today.
And yes, and that's the reason that we've got the equity share built into it,
Okay.
so that
Explain
they
me
have to
again
share
about the
that.
equity share.
The equity share is that when the property is sold, they need to share a percentage of the appreciated value in the property with the city.
Proportional to the amount that we put in?
Exactly, proportional to amount.
So
that
if
we
it's a
put in.
$300,000 purchase and we put 60,000 into it, that's 20%.
Yeah.
So we would share in 20% of the equity increase
That's
at the
correct.
close of escrow?
And the increase of the appreciated value.
And if they keep the home, then they just keep there and live there and enjoy
As
it.
long as they keep the home, the payment is deferred. So there's no payment on the loan. That is collected at the time that they sell it or transfer title. We would then collect the principal value of the loan plus the share in the appreciated value.
Then who's going to, 30 existing staff in the administration of the program, you're gonna have one project assistant position. Who's gonna actually go out there and do the field work to verify that these folks are actually doing what they say they're doing,
Well,
the residents of the home?
that will be made up of the other staff that are currently at LHD that are operating other comparable or similar programs. So we've got existing first-time homebuyer programs, and wherein staff underwrites all the loans for these, that staff will continue to do that work for this program. In addition, each of these properties will be inspected by our housing rehabilitation staff. So we've got staff where we provide rehabilitation loans to people out in
Prior
the
to
community.
closing? Escrow.
Yes, yes. They will go out, they will perform the inspection and prepare a work write-up as to what type of rehabilitation work needs to be done to the property. We'll be looking at code items, health and safety items, mostly with systems, roofs, plumbing, electrical, those types of things. As they identify those things, then we will provide a rehabilitation loan to the borrower to make those repairs. So each house will be inspected by LH staff. Each loan will be underwritten by LHD staff. And then once it closes, the loan closes, they've moved into the house, then LHD staff in our occupancy monitoring and portfolio management will be responsible for doing the ongoing monitoring of these properties to ensure that the folks continue to reside there.
If I may, attachment D of the report actually lists the various staff in LHD who will be doing the direct work for the program.
And how many homes do you think they'll be able to obtain with the $32 million?
We
will
anticipate
that go?
just over 300,
300 homes?
yeah.
You know, frankly, depends on how far the market falls.
It keeps on falling.
Yep. Ain't gonna be much equity anytime soon.
Well, Mr. Parks,
My final question, you mentioned earlier, this is available to those who may have a prior foreclosure or maybe even eviction if they can pass the credit line.
If they can qualify for a first mortgage loan, that's right.
Thank you.
and Housing has already heard this?
Yeah, we did.
Did they make any other provisions?
No,
So the-
That's what's
for the
reflected
program?
in yours.
Hello?
Meg Barkley with the CLA. The Housing Department did approve the recommendations included in the CLA and CAO report. I don't believe there were any modifications.
There were none.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where's an amendment to?
On recommendation 5,
And that is done because since our report was released, the city attorney notified the Housing Department that an ordinance was not necessary to establish the fund that will contain and sort of segregate the neighborhood stabilization program funds from the rest of the Housing Department's budget. There's no ordinance necessary, and so we modified that portion of the report to allow them to establish the fund without an ordinance.
okay, so I'll move the report as modified.
Mr. Parks?
Second.
Okay, it's approved, thank you, and good luck with the program.
Thank you.
I'm gonna do the playback. Okay, number 2, please. And 4. 2 and 4. 2 and 4 together.
2 and 4 together? Yep.
Item 2 is related to the establishment of the salary for the new class of Port Electrical Mechanic Apprentice. And item 4 is an amendment to an MOU for building trades rank and file, and this to provide the class change for the container crane mechanic. It's not going to be called Port Electrical Mechanic. And it also provides a 5.5 bonus for this class.
Okay. Thomas?
Good afternoon. Thomas Simonowski from CAO. These 2 items were both considered and approved by the ERC on December 9th, 2008. The first item, Port Electrical Mechanic Apprentice, this request is a salary setting for a newly created class. The apprentice will assist journeyman-level port mechanics at the Harbor Department in the areas of electrical, mechanical, and rigging maintenance of marine terminal structures exclusively at the port. This also includes installing, connecting electrical wires, high-voltage splicing, and repairing electric motors. Employment in this class is limited to 5 years, after which an incumbent must successfully complete his or her apprenticeship and promote to Port Electrical Mechanic. The requirement for apprentice is a high school diploma with 1 year of algebra, and it's requested to set this salary at 40% of the existing port mechanic salary, which would be $34,577. And then each year, the salary would increase by about 10%, where it would be capped at 80%, or $69,133 annually. The second request is for Port Electric Mechanic, and this is an MOU amendment with the Building Trades Council to change the name from Container Crane Mechanic to Port Electrical Mechanic, and also to provide a 5.5% bonus for mechanics that successfully complete on-the-job training and classroom instruction to satisfy Cal OSHA requirements for electrical safety. This was necessary because over the course of time, the duties of the class have changed to evolve to now include high-voltage work on electrical conductors. And PEM class is really a journey-level class that performs skilled work in electrical areas, mechanical areas, welding, rigging, and electronic maintenance and repair. And this class is also exclusively utilized over at the port. The port currently has 15 filled positions, and so the cost of this bonus would be approximately $85,000. And both of these costs are obligations of the Harbor Department and have no effect on the general fund. If you have any questions, we'd be more than happy to answer them for you.
This is just for 5 positions, right?
The apprenticeship is for 5 positions, that's correct.
And then on 4, that was on 2, on 4.
On 4, there's currently 15 filled positions, and in order to qualify, the incumbent would have to go through the successful coursework and on-the-job training, and also have 1 year as a port mechanic to receive the 5.5% bonus.
Mr. Parks?
No question. Move the item.
Okay.
Items.
Let's hear from the other representative.
Daniel Biao with the Building Trades Council. It's a pleasure to see you, members. Thank you for your thoughtful consideration. I'm here to answer any questions that you might have. This is an important program. We believe it should be the model, bringing apprenticeship into the civil service environment here in the city of Los Angeles, as we've done in other agencies. From our perspective, it helps you reduce your crew composition costs by training folks on the internal systems that you currently have, some of which haven't been manufactured in years. It allows you to actually get a qualified journey-level person and pay him when he's actually fully trained on your systems.
Or she. You said pay him, or her.
Yeah, of course.
Of course.
No, it's clear.
Sorry.
That's what I meant to say.
Some of us are still politically incorrect.
There you go.
I apologize.
Well, none of us
Just in
are,
case you ever want to run for office, just.
none of us
Gotta
are
say he,
ever
she, her,
politically
him.
incorrect, those were political. Okay.
Not I.
So we have a recommendation, we have a second and approval. So 2 and 4 moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Let's go to
You
5.
represent the men and women well. Thank you very much.
There you go. Number 5.
For item 5, the Personnel Department has submitted a report, and this is relative to the renewal of the city's current contracts for the life and disability insurance plans.
Understand you're leaving, Ms. King.
I am. Well,
Yeah.
it's not official yet, but
Oh, it's not?
it still has to be approved by the Board of Supervisors.
Oh,
But
well,
I've
it-
accepted a position.
They've cut their funding, so
Turn the mic off.
maybe out of luck.
She just said that over the mic. I just wondered.
It's all right.
It's official now, okay.
Better be.
Okay, this is something that you obviously dealt with for a long time. Prudential Insurance Company and Standard Insurance Company
Right.
for life and disability insurance plans. That doesn't cost us anything.
Actually, it does.
Does?
There are two areas in which it costs the city money. Oh, first off, I'm sorry, Mary Ann Keene, Personnel Department. For life insurance, it's $420,000 per year from the general fund, and that's for the basic life insurance plan that all civilian employees have of $10,000. Then for the disability insurance, it's $6.2 million per year, and that's for the 50% disability plan, again, that all civilian employees have. In both cases, there is a significant portion which is employee paid for the supplemental life insurance and the supplemental disability plan. The good news is both vendors have agreed for no increase over the next 2 years, which is unheard of.
Well, maybe they're hurting for business too. Okay. I understand the first one, but the 6.2 million disability insurance.
Right. All civilian employees have a 50% disability insurance plan for 2 years. So once you run out of your 100% sick time and your 75% sick time, you go on to a disability insurance plan where you have up to 2 years at 50% of your salary up to a maximum of like
Now, do the
$3,000.
employees pay any of those costs, or is it all?
That part is that's all city paid. If the employee wants up to 66 2/3% of their salary, and that would be up to $10,000 a month, the employee has to pay that portion.
Okay,
And employees pay about $4 million of that.
all right. Does the county have a lucrative program like that?
It's pretty good.
It's pretty good, but maybe not as good as this
Bill
one.
Fujioka recruit?
Huh?
Are you a Bill Fujioka
Yeah,
recruit?
she is, a turncoat, one over at Braille Food Show. She's
not
leaving the
saying
ship.
anything.
Bill's taking, who else did he take? You're not the only one. He's recruiting us to become county supervisors. Yeah, that's what they do. Okay, do you want to move this one?
Yes, we'll move
Okay. Thank you very much, Marianne, and
Thank
good
you.
luck to you.
Thank you.
You've been easy to work with. Number 6.
The Personnel Department has submitted a report for item 6, and this has to do with consolidated reasonable accommodations for employees with permanent work restrictions as a result of industrial or non-industrial injuries or illnesses, and this for the second quarter of fiscal year 2008-2009.
So,
Hi, Raylan Napper, Personnel Department, EEO section. The report is an overview of citywide efforts towards reducing workers' compensation costs and reasonable accommodation of employees with permanent work restrictions. The report covers the second quarter of the current fiscal year, so October, November, December. The attachment 1 is the workers' compensation costs. You see the first and second quarter of this fiscal year. And the second quarter, there were about 93,000 light-duty hours worked, which translates into about $3 million of IOD saved. Just under $11 million was spent on IOD, so that's for those injured individuals that are unable to work. There's an overall decrease from the first quarter of this fiscal year, and an across-the-board increase since the second quarter of last year. But the light-duty hours and IOD saved, which is the good numbers, are up. The IOD spent is only up slightly from the second quarter of last year, mostly due to cost of living. You move on to the third attachment, or attachment 2, page 1. The summary of internal requests for reasonable accommodation. So within each department, there were 81 new requests in the quarter, 64 granted, 6 denied, and 119 pending. Attachment 3 is the citywide placement efforts. So for those individuals that couldn't be accommodated by their departments or put into citywide placement, we had 3 new cases this quarter, 4 resolved, and 28 are pending.
So it looks like the biggest bulk here is the police department.
For workers' comp, yeah.
Okay. So overall, trying to analyze these numbers. We're up or down overall?
Overall, from the first quarter, we're down. The previous quarter.
Okay. All right. Any questions on this?
Let me just ask, and I may not have the right term, but there's a process when somebody's IOD and we go through the reasonable accommodation, but there's another term where we have to have some agreement with them. What do they call it? Interactive. Where are we on that? Because we've had at least 2 or maybe 3 lawsuits that clearly came about because individual departments weren't aware of the process, and we were kind of going through the city paying off lawsuits as each department figured it out. And we, at the time, I think on one of the lawsuits, we asked the personnel department to see if they could take a more active role in this whole business of accommodation and interactive process.
Right.
Yeah, the interactive
That's the interactive process is the first step of the reasonable accommodation process. The personnel department, in conjunction with the city attorney, is currently revising our reasonable accommodation guidelines. So those will go out hopefully in a more helpful format for the department coordinators as well as supervisors. The past edition is available on our website, and we do training in a couple of our classes for supervisors and anyone interested. And then our placement officer is very aggressive in his placement efforts and also in our efforts to follow up with departments and ensure that they are timely handling these requests.
Now, does the other 40 departments view personnel department as the resource for information, or once we distribute that information, do we just rely on their personnel function to carry the ball? Because that's where it seemed to be the breakdown. Everybody was dealing with it differently.
Right. We do encourage them. I would like to think they think of us as a resource. We have a citywide reasonable accommodation coordinator, and he speaks regularly with the personnel sections of departments, and each department has a reasonable accommodation counselor or coordinator as well. So everyone's linked there. Everyone knows who is who. We also have quarterly EEO meetings for all the EEO coordinators, and reasonable accommodations are often discussed there in particular cases.
Are the EEO coordinators and the accommodation coordinators the same people?
Sometimes. In smaller departments, they usually are. Larger departments, you may have people specializing in reasonable accommodation and others in EEO.
Do we have anything where the reasonable accommodation people all get together periodically?
Not just them, no.
I just asked you to talk to your general manager to see how that might work, because it comes to us on the lawsuit side,
Right.
and they get very expensive, because they basically say, you know, you really have no defense if you're not following your rules.
Mm-hmm.
And so you just end up paying.
Okay, that's a good idea. We'll look into that.
Thank you.
Okay, want to move it?
Mhm.
Okay, that matter's resolved and approved. Number 3, please.
The city administrative officer, city attorney have submitted an ordinance relative to the 2009-2011 special parking memorandum of understanding. This is to reflect an agreement reached by the Joint Labor Management Committee on commute options and parking.
Good afternoon. Carolyn Cooper, representing the CAO's office. What is before you is a successor MOU for a term of 3 years to the current special parking MOU, and it conforms with the instructions from the Executive Employee Relations Committee. This was negotiated and agreed upon by a Joint Labor Management Committee on commute options and parking, and basically achieves a revenue-neutral city employee rideshare program that had been running in the red because of increased gas prices and other factors over the last year. It, as you can see from our report, the typical current single parking permit fee is $46 per month without the city's tax, and that will go up to $56 and ultimately up to $64. Van fares are also being increased, and what this will do is enable the city to raise the transit subsidy from the current rate of $50 per month to $60 per month. The city has been under pressure from the AQMD to provide a greater incentive in the form of an increased transit subsidy to rideshare, or not to rideshare, but to participate in higher occupancy modes of transportation, such as the buses and the trains. And the revenue we receive through parking permits pays for that. So it's a sort of a balancing of being able to provide greater incentives in the form of a transit subsidy, finance those, and also provide somewhat of a disincentive to ride alone in a single car. It's a balancing of incentives and disincentives to comply with AQMD.
Well, I thought when we went to the compressed work schedule, one of the issues was reduced traffic, reduced congestion, reduced pollution, and that would help some of the issues they were concerned about from AQMD. Because instead of driving to work 5 days a week, they drive to work 3 days a week. What happened with that trade-off?
As far as getting brownie points from AQMD, Mary Ann, are you she can comment on that, on the specifics on that.
Yet.
Mary Ann Keene, Personnel Department. It's helped to a degree, but it's not enough to reach our goals that are set by the AQMD. And those are called average vehicle ridership goals. And what most folks in the city are on is the 980. That's not enough to get us there.
What about the fire department that stays at the station, or the police department that's on the 24-hour or the 12-hour shift?
Well, the police department on a 12-hour shift, that helps, except most police facilities, as you probably know, are exempt from a lot of these AQMD requirements because they're patrol or detective, and they're excluded from AQMD requirements. Fire department.
But we require them to pay, though. They're excluded from the requirement, but we require the police and central to pay.
Yeah, well, let me just add to that. We charge parking permit fees at the AQMD regulated sites, and for the most part, that's the downtown Los Angeles area, the West LA Civic Center, and the Van Nuys Civic Center. So, for example, out at Devonshire Station, we don't charge for parking permit, even though those employees are eligible for the transit subsidy. So it's
But it's not practical for transit subsidy if you work in Devonshire or West Valley, because there's no real public transit to those locations other than a bus.
Well, the bus, they get it for the bus.
Well,
That
and they live
qualifies.
in Simi and Santa Clarita, so they have to leave so many hours before their shift would begin.
Well,
It's not practical. And then to carry your gun out there and your uniform,
And
well, there's
one of
also
the
for civilians, though.
yeah.
The
Yeah.
main reasons for police officers being exempted was because of it's difficult to be in a rideshare program because you never know exactly when your shift ends.
Right.
So that's one of the PPL went to the AQMD, lobbied it, and got police officers exempted that are on patrol or detective. Now, almost everyone in Parker Center, they're not exempted, so.
But I heard that the Protective League paid money, like $200,000, to remove their officers from the condition.
There was an agreement with the city as, they didn't do that to the AQMD.
Did it
That
with
was
the
part of the
city?
city agreement as getting, when they left they resigned from, they took themselves out of the MOU. And yes, there was an agreement as far as there was a significant sum paid for the home garage vehicles and some other.
I heard it was $200,000.
There was a mix of what was done, and it had to do with the home garage vehicles. But I have the appendix to the police rank and file MOU if you'd like to see it, and what charges they pay now.
When is that effective? When was that effective?
It was first added on to the 2003-06 MOU, and it's still in effect, and it's been amended to increase the rates. So the rates charged to the police officers are the same rates that are charged to members of the Special Parking MOU that belong to the Joint Labor Management Committee on Parking. But
To those of us who park here at City Hall, we will be paying July and 09 $64 to park our city car here at City Hall.
correct.
What if we left the car here and used public transit to come back and forth to work, and just use a city car that was part of the pool,
Then you would qualify for the transit subsidy.
and wouldn't pay the $64,
That's correct.
but the car would still be here?
If it was part of the fleet vehicle, because right now you can only choose one mode of rideshare feature, whether that's a single permit, carpool permit, the take-home garage permit, van pool, or a transit subsidy.
So motorcycles, night, weekend, carpools, other employee parking permits similarly would be increased. So someone rides a motorcycle or works nights or weekends and carpools, so everything's going up.
Everything's going up, and there's still incentive to carpool, obviously, because people, it's charged per car, so the participants in the car split the cost, and that's the incentive for carpooling. So obviously, the more riders you have in the car, the cheaper everybody pays.
Okay. Mr. Parks?
No.
We have a comment, Mr. McCosker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilmember Pat McCosker, President, United Firefighters, Local 112. We are not signatories to the MOU, and we're not intending to sign. And it's not because we don't understand the value of a program like this. We, support the notion that that the city ought to incentivize carpooling and disincentivize those that don't. But we also, would argue for fairness here and say that groups of employees that can take advantage of that and have it be cost neutral for them the way it is for the city, it makes sense for them to be in an MOU like this. For those of us that can't take advantage of it and would only be penalized basically by these fees and wouldn't be able to really carpool and take advantage of buses and trains and van pooling, shouldn't be penalized in this way. And that's the situation that firefighters are in. You know our shift schedule. You know that the city has a policy basically of it's called constant staffing, meaning that every seat on every fire truck and ambulance is filled every day, and that a good portion of that is by overtime, firefighters working in other fire stations. And you therefore would know that we can't be expected to drive in a carpool and then to abandon, the group, the carpool, and to not have a way home and all that kind of stuff because of working in other locations. What we have now, and by the way, we have participated in this work group in the past for the purpose of making sure that it treated firefighters fairly. We didn't get a chance to participate in this one. This MOU was actually signed by a few people, not by anyone from Local 112, on the very day that I took office, as I came back into office. So I had no, advance notice of what was going on, no opportunity to have anybody there. We wouldn't have signed, as I said, for the reason that it, wouldn't treat firefighters fairly. And I would point out, by the way, that the Article 2 clearly says that it's a MOU between signatories and the city, and we are not at this time a signator. Again, we don't want firefighters that are working in some of the most difficult, most challenging assignments in the city to be disincentivized to work there. We've got 105 neighborhood fire stations in the city, and what this would do is cause the firefighters in brand new Fire Station 4, hazmat trained crew, for instance, who just, had their new station open, just moved into it a couple of months ago, would cause them to suddenly be the first firefighters and the only firefighters in the city paying to park there at the firehouse and penalized for working there. And I think the last thing we'd want to do is have them willingly then choose to go to another firehouse to drop those EMT skills and that desire to work downtown in one of the busiest locations and go to one of the other fire stations that they could just as easily, with their seniority, choose to work at. So I ask you to carve us out of this agreement. We're actually not in it already, but I would certainly urge you, ask you to make sure that as this thing goes forward to the full council, that it does not include firefighters. Thank you.
When station number 4 moved to the new location, they lost the close proximity to Philippi's.
To the which?
Philippi's.
I know. That is something else they have to deal with there. Very true.
Now they got to jump in the truck and go over. Okay, looking at there's a lot of blank signature boxes, including United Firefighters, City Firefighters, Chief Officers Association, Police Command, General Services.
If I may comment on that.
Sure.
We keep the original MOU in the CAO's office and continue to collect signatures because it takes time to do that. But we go ahead and send a copy forward as part of the council file. So, in fact, today the inspectors came in and signed. So we're continuing to get signatures. We have more signatures on the original at this point.
Well, the one who's protesting today is United Firefighter, UFLAC. Do you have a signature from them?
No, but they signed a couple, I think, areas I need to clarify. That the UFLAC is a signatory to the MOU that created this JLMC. They are a signatory to the bylaws that establish the guidelines for this JLMC. The UFLAC representative had been there all year and had voted on this MOU, and he happened to not be at the meeting when the draft was brought in to be approved, but he had been notified of that meeting. So the UFLAC representative that was elected by UFLAC had participated actively and voted on this MOU over the course of the last year.
But they didn't. Now, if I was looking at this in a court setting, if they didn't sign it and they weren't there for that final vote, would that qualify? Council jump up and protest?
Well, let me just comment on the bylaws establish what a quorum is, and the approval, just like in council, what constitutes a minimum vote of approval under certain circumstances. And the approval, there are 8 voting members of the JLMC, 4 union, 4 management. A majority approval vote requires a vote of 5, of which 2 each, at least a minimum of 2 must be from union and 2 must be from management, but 5 votes. There were 3 union votes in favor on December 8th of this MOU. So it complied with and there was a quorum present. So it absolutely met all the requirements, above the minimum requirements of approval for the Joint Labor Management Committee approving this successor MOU.
So,
and I might add that platoon duty is nothing new to this MOU. It's in the current MOU, and UFLAC is signatory on the current MOU that's in place.
It's not current anymore, but I would direct you to Article 2, which says that this is an MOU between blah-blah-blah and signatories to the MOU. So we are not signatories. They should have written Article 2 to say, and anybody that participated can be added to this MOU or bound by it by 3 unions who voted for it. But it doesn't say that. It says signators, and we're not on the signature line for UFLAG.
No, I understand that. The other aspect on this platoon duty permit, so if they're working in a fire station or the water and power building, they have to pay for parking? I don't know what station that is. near the, behind the Water and Power,
I think it's Station 3
off of Temple?
Station,
and Beaudry.
Yeah, near
well, the one
Beaudry.
off, the one on Temple now is new Station 4.
No,
Station
no,
3
no.
is on First and Vermont.
No,
No.
it's behind Water and Power. Wait, what station is that?
Yeah, I thought it was 3. Thank you.
No,
Yeah.
are they required to pay? Would they be considered this downtown area? Or were they outside the Civic Center?
I'd have to look at that. We'd have to look.
How many stations do we have in this?
One of the issues with the new Fire Station 4 is it's part of a complex of other city facilities.
Right.
Personnel Department, Medical Services Division is right there. We've been engaged in other meetings outside of this MOU process about all the parking issues at that Emergency Operations Center. So that's also been going on in other forums dealing with actual parking spaces and accommodating all the needs of the different departments housed there.
And that's where the EOC is going to be established, the new?
Correct.
So you're
As-
talking about that.
as-
But how many stations do we have in the Civic Center that are affected by this? Or like Van Nuys, the station, the one across from your office, is that affected by
Not
this?
paying, they're not paying. And neither is Station 3 right now, or Station 9, by the way, the busiest assignment west of the Mississippi. Those places
One on-
are not paying to park there, nor should they pay to park there, and that's why we've participated.
No, I'm asking, are they included in this,
Are they included in? we-
this plan?
Affected by it.
Are they affected? In other words, the stations that Mr. McCosker mentioned, would they fall under this umbrella to pay?
We have to look at it because the issue may be the number of, the fact that Fire Station 4 is part of a larger complex. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice
Nothing
now.
to do with it, though. If
Yes,
it's
with
part
more
of-
employees reporting. So we have to look at that a little more closely. But
Well, if it's part of a larger complex, I understand that, but they don't have the people in the other complex jumping on a fire truck and going to calls or providing paramedic service. Just because they share a facility, their responsibilities are totally different.
right,
So, I mean, I can separate out that aspect. It's like the police department, they've got sworn and civilian. The civilian don't carry a gun, the sworn do carry a gun. The sworn gets shot at, the civilian don't get shot at. I mean, there's a distinction between the two, but just because they share the same complex.
right. But the sworn at Parker Center are paying the current $46 parking.
Well, they're not here
permit.
protesting, the fire
Right.
department is.
No, I
That's my
understand.
concern. And then I look at Civic Center across from my colleague's office, 39?
Yes.
39, Station 39. We have, what, 106 stations citywide?
Yes, yes, sir.
So the ones that would be paying up to $64 could simply say,
But that's not platoon duty.
that's not what?
Let me see. The platoon duty rate is much lower. In fact, the current rate for platoon duty is $15.33 a month. It's approximately $7.50 biweekly.
Oh, I see. So there's a different rate.
Yes,
So
it's
why,
lower.
why do we give them a different rate?
Because they're not there as many days. And theoretically, the spaces are shared, just like we charge less for nights.
Well,
For
then,
the-
motorcycles, for example, are they given a discount rate?
Yes,
Because they don't take as much space.
that's correct.
So the hybrid should pay less than the pickup truck.
Now you're getting political.
No, if we're using the size of the vehicle as a factor, how much space they take. So, Van Nuys Civic Center, West Los Angeles, we have stations in West LA, Civic Center, downtown, so even though it's a lower rate. Go ahead.
Question, Mr. McCosker, you're here speaking for 106 different facilities, or you're talking about how many facilities that would be affected by this decision?
Well, it sounds like possibly 4 are in the downtown area, and
Yeah, because my staff, the work that we did, we counted 4.
Okay.
So that being the case,
4 in downtown.
yeah, but we're not talking about the rest of the city at this time, right? I mean,
Well, it doesn't look like it, although what I'm hearing from the CAO's office is that a 3-union majority at a quorum can sign off for everybody else in the city, and who knows what the next MOU may look like. Again, what I'm saying is we're not signatories to this, nor do we intend to be, nor would we have been had I received proper notice and had the opportunity to participate in this. And the reason for that is because This program cannot be fair to firefighters. It cannot be cost neutral to firefighters the way it can be for another group of employees.
Okay, now, to clarify for the record,
Okay?
you're not saying that firefighters shouldn't be considered for this. What you're saying is firefighter schedules, 9 times out of 10, tend to be very, very different than most city employees. For example, your firefighters, most of them, if not all of them, who are assigned to stations, usually sleep there, et cetera. It's not a 9 to 5, right? So it's a different kind of work schedule.
Essentially, that's correct.
Yeah.
There's a need to have your own car at the firehouse. I've been working for 29 years for the LAFD, and I
And
can
guess-
count on one hand the number of times guys rode in together, and it's because someone's car wouldn't start in the morning. But you need to have your own car when you come into the firehouse, because you never know when you're going to be forced to work the next day at another fire station, and you can't therefore take your carpool partner home.
So you're apprising
Or go
us,
home with one.
apprising us of a practice that could and does happen where, as a firefighter, unlike you're not giving an opinion about other jobs, I'm speaking now.
Right.
Unlike a lot of other jobs, you could show up at firehouse number 32, and then halfway into that particular schedule of 3 or 4 days or whatever it is, you could be told, excuse me, we need you to go over to firehouse number 46 starting in 4 hours. And you say, yes, sir, or yes, ma'am, and you go, right?
You're ordered, that's correct, you're ordered to do that quite often.
And then I call in sick, and you are forced to work overtime.
And stay there.
For me.
So if I'm forced to stay there, and I came in with Rob, because we live in Simi Valley together, and I came in with Rob, then all of a sudden Rob's like, Pat, I gotta get going, and you're like, well, go ahead, Rob, because I gotta, Dennis again didn't come in, and therefore I gotta stay.
If they force overtime.
That is correct.
On you, unlike the police department. The mandatory staffing, if you need 4, you're gonna get 4 one way or another. Which is different than other, police department, they just run short. Most departments, they run short.
Now, my final question on this, obviously, detailed analysis has been done since this item was taken up 10, 12 minutes ago. But if we're talking about affecting only 4 fire facilities right now, if we exempted those in this motion, would that fundamentally cause a problem with the rest of this to go forward? Is it?
Yes, it possibly may, because we would have to go back to the committee. But let me comment on one other thing. This was a joint labor management process, and it affected unions differently. Not everybody is similarly situated. Obviously, the clerical unit of ASME has lower paid employees. This was a situation where compromises are made for the greater good, and it's to avoid very hefty fines by the AQMD and to achieve a revenue-neutral program. Currently, if we had not increased to the levels that we are increasing, parking permits and including the locations and the unions that are involved, we would be looking at an annual contribution to the general fund of $500,000 a year. This program was running in the red. So in order to pay for the van pool leases, to provide the city gas that goes into them, which gas, as you know, has gone up since these MOUs were negotiated, this is what was developed. And it's unfortunate that Mr. Oscar is saying that UFLAC didn't participate, because it did, and UFLAC did sign the bylaws that said there would be a core group of union members representing all the unions that were signatories to the bylaws, which UFLAC is a signatory.
Let me ask one thing. On
Yes.
the prior MOU, the
Yes.
one that's expiring,
Yes, well, it had already expired, and the committee extended it to December 31st.
well, that MOU, what's the difference between that MOU and the one that you're proposing?
The only thing different is the rate increases and the subsidy increase.
Okay,
And we collapsed some categories of downtown parking facilities that didn't change the impact on Platoon. What changed is the only thing different, and it has nothing to do with the parking MOU, is Fire Station 4 that used to be out of the downtown boundary as defined in this MOU, which used to be, as you pointed out, across from Felipe's. When they closed that, and built the new fire station, it brought it into this area, and it was part of a larger complex. And so those firefighters are currently being charged, but UFLAC absolutely participated. Their member voted on this MOU. It was bargained in good faith. It was developed to be revenue neutral. It obviously doesn't affect all the union members the same.
Let me ask you this, is that, it's one more station in the fire station, how many people?
It's about, I understand, about 60 people.
Okay, so that's 60 more people are paying this, on this
That's
deal
right.
than we're paying before.
And they're paying less than what you council members are paying for your take-home vehicle for that permit, or for what I'm paying, or probably anybody sitting at this table right now.
I thought we had the best rate.
Best parking spot. You got the best parking spot.
Just kidding, just kidding.
You know,
I
another
don't want to
fact-
open up that one, never mind.
They're not paying yet.
Another factor we need to consider is money goes in to defray the cost of the carpool, the van pools, et cetera.
And the transit subsidy. We're really getting hammered by the AKMD. We had not raised the transit subsidy in 10
I
years.
understand that, but I question how many firefighters assigned to Station 4 are able to take public transit to work because of their hours.
But either are the police command officers who signed,
They
who are
could take home
signatory.
cars, but they could take the
Right,
cars.
but that's the point. How many of those would actually use transit subsidy?
They don't, but they get a take-home
Because-
car.
Correct, but just to,
I'd rather a take-home car than use public transit subsidy.
but what, if you remember way back when,
You're paying for your parking even with the take-home.
Even with a take-home car.
that's correct. And one of the issues when we went to fact-finding way back when with the Police Protective League, if you remember, because we were both involved in that at the time, and Captain James Tatro with the command officers, the issue they had at the time is, well, wait a minute, we can't take public transit. We have to have a take-home car, and why should we pay to contribute to the transit subsidy
That we can't use.
that we can't use? And then once it was explained that it's for the greater good, and this is the only way we can raise the revenue, is it doesn't affect everybody the same way. He was like, okay,
Once his accountant told him what a car really means to him.
yeah. Then he was a.
Can I,
Then they were on board.
can I
So-
add so that people can understand
Tatro died.
our inability to use public transportation? The fact that when a firefighter works at a different location, whether it's a detail in the middle of the shift or the next morning when he's forced to go someplace else, he or she has to take all of their turnout gear with them, all of their safety gear, their boots, a couple of uniforms, and all the turnouts. In my flip-down SUV, it takes up the entire back of the SUV. This is a reason why firefighters have to bring their own vehicle.
I have no question on that. I understand what you're coming from. I understand the fact is you're not signatory, but the bylaws permit because they have the representative number of people there. I can understand both sides of the fence. If I was a judge in court, I would say go back to the table and figure it out. That's what I'd say. In good conscience, and I look at this objectively, maybe the bylaws say this, maybe someone voted on it, you have a new president from the UFLAC, obviously not agreeing with it. If it was the other administration, maybe it'd be a different scenario. But these other factors, I think, come into play that we need to be cognizant of. Fire Station 4, when it was on Main.
North Main.
which to me is part of the Civic Center, but maybe it was 100 feet out.
Technically.
And now we're on 4, which is on another street. I mean, you're talking a matter, if you were to measure the distance, I think the distance is very minor.
Well,
between
it was
two.
the border. Chavez, Cesar Chavez
Okay.
was the
That's the dividing line?
dividing line.
And this is north of there.
So now it's south of Cesar
Yeah.
Chavez. Before it was north.
Council
So if they
members,
built that station further east, then it wouldn't be qualified. I mean, that's the issue.
East of the LA River.
East of the LA, yeah.
But
Yes,
the
ma'am. Hold on.
AQMD
Wait, the young lady wants to speak.
Phyllis Lyons,
Right,
Personnel
the
Department.
HMD district.
Personnel
Both young
Department,
ladies wanna speak.
specifically Marianne at the other end of the table, is involved day to day in interpreting this parking MOU. As I'm sure everyone in this room knows, parking in downtown Los Angeles is an extremely sensitive issue.
Right.
And right now, we have one representative from one union before you. I can guarantee you, every union that represents every employee who works downtown could have some compelling stories to share as to why their members should get some sort of different treatment. I think the fact that we were able to hammer out this agreement when we did years ago speaks wonders for the people who did that. I just caution you, if we start eliminating one group of individuals or another, it will be unending.
Okay, so let me do this. Let me continue the matter, that maybe you folks can sit down and discuss it, so we're not going to shelve it.
Now, at the least, at the least, my reason for agreeing with you to continue it, one of the core things I'd like to get clarified, when did you just take your new responsibilities?
I was sworn in on the night of December 7th, and this was signed by somebody on December 8th.
Yeah, so if you could please clarify with them who had authority, who didn't, et cetera, at least get that clarified, so that we understand that everybody knows what standing they're on, at least on that point. And then, you know, restate your arguments with them and/or before this committee again. But the one thing that from where I'm sitting, there are some tremendously unique responsibilities and/or characteristics of people who work at fire stations. And I'm not even going to say all firefighters, because if you're, you know, pushing paper at the main place where all the brass hang out, you don't have turnouts and stuff like that. And if you do, it's interesting because you never use them. But when you're at a fire station, there are, you know, the continuous days in which you work, the fact that you do need to take your equipment with you if they reassign you in the middle of your stay there. But the thing is, at the least, let's at least get clarified, did somebody sign off? Was that appropriate? Unfortunately, almost to the day when you took on this responsibility, but at least let's get that clarified first.
And if you didn't sign, could it have been done without your signature? So, you know, instead of killing this, and I don't want to unravel, as Ms. Lyons said.
Because we got
all the other-
AQMD as well. And
there's factors here. So let's
Yeah,
continue this
beyond our
matter.
control.
We'll reschedule it down the road, and hopefully you all can get together.
But
Mariana's going to
with-
bail, but you won't have to worry about it.
With all due respect, Mr. Chairman, I'm hoping, I think your committee meets every other week.
Yes.
I'm hoping that we could, if you would please, if we could agendize this for 2 weeks.
That's fine. So
Because, you know,
the
because
direction is for you folks to sit down
2
and
weeks
see
could
what
turn
can
into
happen.
3 months, and I hope that we don't
Good point.
need to do that.
Thank you. All right. That's it.
Okay,
Anything else?
What'd you say, Tom?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're losing significant.
And fines, too.
The general fund's taking a hit.
I understand that. Okay. Well, 2 weeks is going to bankrupt us. We're already bankrupt. So
And,
that's
and,
it.
and
Thank
I'll
you.
just,
Yeah.
you know, an EERC, this complies with the instructions from EERC as well. This is what we brought forward to you.
I'm not arguing your point at all.
Okay, thank you.
You're doing what you need to do.